So what if I told you that saying the word please to a restaurant host isn't actually about being polite at all?
Oh, it completely flips the script on how we view like a standard Friday night dinner.
Right. What if beneath the surface of that pleasantry, it's actually this primal survival tactic?
A survival tactic designed to secure territory.
Exactly. In a really competitive environment. I mean, we like to think of a restaurant visit as just a simple exchange of currency for calories.
Right. But the reality is much more complex than that.
Yeah, so I want you, the listener, to really picture your last restaurant visit. Just imagine you're walking through the double doors. The smell of garlic is in the air. The dining room is just buzzing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you just order food, or were you unknowingly participating in this highly choreographed linguistic ballet?
Great question.
Because that is the mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring the fascinating, largely hidden linguistic layer of dining out.
And our source material today is incredibly illuminating on this. We're working from a transcript provided by an English learning audio guide called Podzone.
Podzone, yeah.
Specifically an episode they produced titled The Ultimate Guide to Restaurant English.
And before you think, I already speak English, why do I need an audio guide transcript?
Right, why bother?
Here is where it gets absolutely captivating. Because while this Podzone transcript is ostensibly designed to teach language learners the ropes, it actually serves as a profound psychological X-ray.
Totally.
It shows how human beings communicate. Like, it reveals how the language we use in restaurants evolves from basic survival-level transactional phrases into a highly strategic social chess game.
Which is a brilliant way to frame it, honestly, because whether you're a native speaker or a learner, this source material forces us to understand how vocabulary shapes power dynamics.
No, 100%.
It shapes social rituals and ultimately the culinary experience itself. The words you choose at a table actually dictate the food you get, the service you receive.
And the social standing you project to the room.
Exactly.
So by the time we finish unpacking all of this today, you're going to view your next menu and your next interaction with a waiter in an entirely new light.
It's going to change everything.
So let's unpack this. We can't jump straight into the high-level social chess of fine dining without establishing the baseline first.
Right, we have to start at the bottom.
We need to look at what the source material defines as the A2 to B1 level of English, the survival guide.
And calling it a survival guide is incredibly apt. Think about the underlying psychology of entering a busy restaurant.
It's intense.
You're entering a new, enclosed environment where resources, specifically food and physical space, are limited and being actively distributed.
Wow.
This triggers a very deep, almost subconscious instinct. Your immediate goal is to secure your place in that hierarchy.
So let's walk through the actual mechanics of arriving. You step inside, and the Podzone transcript points out that the very first person you encounter is the host or hostess at the podium.
Right, the gatekeeper.
Their job is to manage the flow of the room, but your job as the diner is to initiate the transaction. And the source highlights this seemingly basic phrase, "A table for two, please."
Let's isolate that moment for a second. Because there is an immense amount of nonverbal and verbal communication happening in a span of maybe 3 seconds.
Yeah.
The source notes that as you walk toward the podium, you must make eye contact and smile.
Which, I mean, feels like common sense, but the text refers to that smile as a universal welcome.
It acts as a universal welcome because stepping into a busy restaurant is effectively stepping into someone else's strictly controlled territory.
Oh, I see.
The hostess stand is basically the border checkpoint. So the smile, combined with the word please, establishes immediate non-threatening intent.
It's like you're signaling to the gatekeeper, I am not here to disrupt your intricate system. I'm here to participate in it respectfully.
Yes.
It actually makes me think of hiking in the woods and encountering another person on a narrow trail.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
You kind of hold your hands open and give a little nod, just a physical way of saying, I come in peace. In a restaurant, a table for two, please, is the linguistic equivalent of showing your hands are empty.
That's a highly accurate analogy. You're actively working to remove friction from the encounter. And then you deliver the essential data, a table for two.
The parameters.
Right. You provide the exact parameters the host needs to solve the real-time puzzle of their floor plan.
So you've smiled, you've dropped your perfectly efficient data packet, and then the transaction forks into two binary paths.
The great divide.
Yeah. The host will either ask, do you have a reservation? which the text also notes is called a booking in some regions, or they hit you with the reality check of the wait time.
And this fork in the road is where the survival aspect really solidifies. If you have the reservation, you respond, yes, I do. It's under the name.
And the tension just evaporates.
Immediately dissipates. You are granted access. You are safe. But if you walk in without one, you are subjected to the gatekeeper's power.
They might just say, the wait is about 20 minutes.
And the source material lays this out as a pure binary choice. You either accept the wait, basically submitting to their timeline, or you leave the territory.
There's no negotiation at the survival level. You just deal with it.
Exactly.
But for the sake of our listener, let's assume you make it past the podium. You're seated. The survival mission instantly shifts from securing territory to securing sustenance.
And that brings us to what the transcript calls the golden phrases of ordering.
Yeah. I would like, or can I have, when I was reading this section, I immediately thought of writing code. Like, have you ever messed around with basic computer programming?
I have a basic understanding of it, sure.
Well, these golden phrases are exactly like the foundational code in a computer script. They're purely functional.
Completely.
Highly efficient, and completely devoid of emotional baggage. You type the command print, and the computer prints the text. In the restaurant, you say, I would like the pepperoni pizza, and the waiter executes the command of transferring a pizza from the kitchen to your table.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. At this A2B1 baseline level, the language isn't designed to build a relationship or express your personality.
Right.
It functions as an API call. You're plugging your request into the restaurant's operational matrix.
It's just request, execute, deliver. I want calories, you bring calories.
However, the source makes a very deliberate point to emphasize that I would like is polite syntax.
Oh, that's true.
To build on your coding analogy, if you write the syntax wrong in a computer program, it throws an error code and crashes.
Yeah, the whole thing breaks.
In a restaurant, if you just point and grunt or say, give me pizza, you throw a massive social error. I would like is the correct, required syntax to execute the command without causing a system crash.
A system crash in the form of a hostile or uncooperative server.
Exactly.
So the social syntax has to be flawless. So you execute your code, the pizza arrives, and you eat. Then there's the final step of the survival guide.
Settling up.
The physical and verbal cues of paying at a basic level.
The Pod Zone guide outlines this beautifully, actually. It notes that it's never just blurting out the word money.
No, never.
It involves a sequence of physical signaling first. You get the waiter's attention with sustained eye contact and a small, deliberate nod.
It's almost stealthy when you think about it.
It has to be stealthy. Shouting across a dining room breaks the social contract of the shared space.
You don't want to be that guy.
No. You use those micro-expressions, the nod, the raised eyebrow, the eye contact, to open a private, secure channel of communication with the server from across the room.
Wow.
Only after that channel is open do you deploy the final essential phrase, the bill, please, or, as the source notes, the check if you are in American English.
And boom, you survived. You secured a table, you extracted calories from the kitchen, you paid your debt, and you escaped back into the night without any major social incidents.
A successful mission.
But, I mean, if all we ever did was survive the restaurant floor, dining out would be incredibly boring.
It would just be refueling.
Which means we need to leave the survival guide behind. The text moves us from the purely functional code into what it calls the masterclass.
The C1 and C2 levels of language.
Right. If basic language gets you fed, advanced language curates the entire environment in which you eat.
And this transition forces us to examine the fundamental difference between eating and dining. The source material begins this exploration with the strategic art of the reservation.
Showing that true dining begins long before you even set foot in the building.
Absolutely.
Let's look at the actual linguistic shift here. At the basic level, you call up and say, I want to book a table. But the advanced speaker uses what the source calls a soft opener.
Yes.
They call the restaurant and say, I was hoping to book a table for 2 for this Friday evening, perhaps around 8.0.
We really need to dissect the grammar of that soft opener. The shift to the past continuous tense, I was hoping, is a fascinating psychological tool. What I want is a present hard demand. It corners the person on the other end of the phone. I was hoping implies a gentle, almost wistful request that explicitly acknowledges the other person's power to say no.
It's like you're giving them an exit ramp before they even have to ask for one.
Precisely.
You're presenting your desire as a thought you had in the past, rather than a demand you're making in the present.
Mm-hmm. Furthermore, adding the phrase perhaps around 8.00 demonstrates a polite flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Paradoxically, by showing that you're flexible and at rigidly demanding an exact time, you actually command far more respect from the restaurant staff.
That makes a lot of sense.
You're signaling right out of the gate that you're a reasonable, accommodating person. And in the hospitality industry, reasonable people consistently get treated better than demanding ones.
So you're not just booking a table, you're setting a tone. You are curating the space. And speaking of curating space, the source brings up this very specific vocabulary of spatial requests.
Facial requests, yes.
At the advanced level, you don't just ask for a table, you ask for a table with a view. Or a quiet nook. Or an intimate booth.
The phrase quiet nook is a brilliant piece of spatial vocabulary. It doesn't just describe a location, it paints an emotional picture of cozy isolation.
Right. It feels different.
When you ask for a quiet nook, you aren't just reserving wood and chairs, you're actively reserving a specific atmosphere.
But then the transcript brings up a tactic that I have to admit I kind of raised an eyebrow at when I was reviewing my notes.
Oh, the special occasion strategy.
Yes. Mentioning an anniversary or a birthday when booking.
What was your issue with it?
I just want to push back on this a little bit. The text frames this as a smart linguistic tool, but isn't casually dropping that it's your anniversary, just a subtle kind of gross manipulation to get better service. Like, hey, it's my special day, so you better give me the window seat and a free dessert.
It is absolutely a manipulation.
Okay, thank you.
But in the context of high-level social interaction and hospitality, we don't frame it as manipulation, we frame it as a strategic move. The source specifically validates this approach.
A strategic move. I love how we can rebrand our own selfishness just by calling it strategy.
It works because it relies on an unspoken social contract. The text explains that mentioning the occasion implicitly suggests you would appreciate a better table without you ever having to explicitly demand one.
Oh, I see.
You offer the restaurant a narrative where you're celebrating a decade of marriage, and the restaurant, in turn, naturally wants to cast itself as the hero of that narrative.
So you are basically trading information for hospitality.
You are. High-end restaurants want to be the stage where your romance or your celebration plays out flawlessly. By giving them the context, you manipulate them into wanting to give you their absolute best.
Because their success becomes intertwined with your special memory.
Exactly.
That is wild. You are basically inceptioning the host into giving you the best seat in the house by making them think it was their idea to celebrate you.
Pretty much.
But let's bring it back to reality. What happens if the inception fails? Imagine you, the listener, arrive at the restaurant. You've used your soft openers, you've dropped the anniversary hint, but the host grabs 2 menus and walks you to a table that is absolutely terrible.
The dreaded bad table.
Yes. This moves us into the next phase from the source material spatial negotiation. I like to call this linguistic chess upon arrival.
This is one of the most volatile moments in the entire dining experience. You're faced with a physical reality, a table that you actively do not want.
It's so awkward.
How does an advanced speaker reject it without causing offense to the person who just offered it?
Let's set the scene vividly.
Yeah.
The host walks you to a table right in the main walkway. The source refers to this area as the thoroughfare.
Ah, yes.
Waiters are rushing past with trays, the kitchen door is swinging open every 10 seconds, there's a draft from the front door. It is chaotic.
The worst spot in the house.
At the A2 survival level, a blunt refusal is just, I don't like this table.
Which functions as a direct attack. It explicitly tells the host that they made a bad choice, undermining their authority in their own territory.
So how do we escape the thoroughfare without starting a war? The pod zone text provides this incredible C1 alternative. This is lovely, but I think we'd prefer a table that's a little less conspicuous.
We have to unpack the specific word choice of conspicuous, which means easily seen or noticed. By asking to be less conspicuous, you're doing something socially brilliant.
So clever.
First, you employ the classic compliment sandwich. This is lovely, but
You flatter the awful, drafty table. You are literally lying to the table's face.
you're flattering the host's choice, which preserves their dignity. But the real magic is in the second half. By saying you want to be less conspicuous, you're making the problem entirely about you, not the table.
Right.
You're communicating this table is far too grand, too central, too important for shy little us. We need to hide away. You politely demand privacy while completely maintaining the host's illusion of perfect hospitality.
It completely reframes the rejection. You aren't rejecting their terrible table, you're rejecting your own worthiness to sit at it.
Exactly.
And the source has another scenario that takes this even further, the neighbor defense.
This occurs when you are seated too close to another table, which is a very common issue in modern cramped bistros.
The source suggests looking at the host and saying, I wonder if there's a table with a little more separation. We'd hate to impose on our neighbor's conversation.
It's masterful.
This honestly blew my mind when I read it. It is like an elite diplomatic mission.
Let's explore why that specific phrasing is so effective.
Well, think about the reality of the situation. You sit down, and the couple next to you is only 6 inches away. You're framing your own incredibly selfish desire for space because, let's be real, you just don't want to hear these strangers arguing about their mortgage or chewing their food.
No, nobody wants that.
But you frame that selfish desire as a deeply empathetic concern for them. Oh, we couldn't possibly impose on their lovely evening. Language here acts as a velvet glove over an iron fist.
It is the ultimate social chess game. You are wielding weaponized politeness to achieve your desired spatial reality. Think about the position it puts the host in.
They're trapped.
They have no choice but to move you, because to refuse your request would mean they're actively endorsing the imposition on the other guests. They cannot say, no, please stay here, and ruin their conversation.
Yeah, they can't say that.
It leaves the host with absolutely no maneuverable space. Checkmate.
Okay, so we've checkmated the host. We've secured the perfect quiet nook away from the thoroughfare and away from the arguing couple. Now we must interact with the server.
The next stage.
At the advanced level, the transcript shifts the focus entirely from issuing commands to building a relationship. It calls this proactive communication.
This is a crucial pivot in the timeline of the meal. At the survival level, as we discussed with the coding analogy, the server is essentially a human vending machine.
Right. Put in the phrase, get the food.
At the advanced level, the server is transformed into your guide, your ally, and the curator of your evening.
And the very first step the source gives for building this server rapport is incredibly simple, but powerful. Using their name immediately.
Yes.
The example given in the text is, Daniel, thank you.
The psychological shift this creates cannot be overstated. Historically, the dynamic between diner and server has been inherently hierarchical, rooted in a master and servant dynamic.
Yeah, diner commands, server obeys.
By deliberately using the server's name right away, you shatter that archaic dynamic.
You change them from a nameless functionary into a recognized human being.
And doing so creates immediate social buy-in from the staff. When you use Daniel's name, you are signaling that you recognize his humanity and, crucially, his individual expertise.
Mm-hmm.
You elevate him from a mere order taker to a collaborator in your dining experience.
I can imagine that from the server's perspective, hearing their name used politely rather than just being snapped at changes their entire physiological response to the table.
Oh, absolutely. It lowers their defenses.
And once you've established that human collaboration, the source suggests making what it calls a strategic inquiry. You don't just look at the menu. You look up and ask, Daniel, could you tell us if there are any specials this evening that aren't on the menu?
If we look at how this functions within the larger restaurant ecosystem, this single question accomplishes two major things simultaneously.
What's the first one?
First, it flatters Daniel. It invites him to step out of the shadows and into the role of an insider who is sharing a closely guarded secret with you.
It's like asking the bouncer to let you into the VIP room, but making the bouncer feel like it's his own VIP room.
Exactly. And second, it positions you, the listener, as an engaged and interested diner.
Ah, I see.
You aren't just a tourist there to consume basic calories. You're an aficionado there to experience the chef's hidden repertoire. You elevate your own status from a standard customer to a preferred client within the span of 30 seconds, entirely through proactive questioning.
So we've engaged the waiter. Daniel is now our trusted culinary guide. Now, we are faced with the menu itself, and the transcript makes a profound point here. A modern menu isn't just a list of ingredients with prices attached. It is a piece of highly crafted literature that must be actively deciphered.
It really is.
We are entering the lexicon of culinary storytelling.
This is the intersection where food marketing and advanced linguistics truly collide. The menu is meticulously designed to create a perception of massive value in your mind before you even taste a single drop of sauce.
Let's dive deep into the adjectives of quality and origin that the source points out. We see these buzzwords everywhere now, from fine dining to fast casual, artisanal, heritage, farm to table.
Let's isolate them and examine the psychology of why they work. Take the word artisanal. What happens in your brain when you read artisanal bread instead of just bread?
It evokes this entire rustic story. If I just see bread, I picture a plastic bag on a grocery store shelf. When I see artisanal bread, I immediately picture a guy with flour on his apron, waking up at 4 a.m., kneading dough by hand on a wooden table in a small, slightly drafty bakery.
The word artisanal injects the concept of invisible human craft into a physical product. You're no longer just buying fermented wheat, you're buying someone's passion and labor.
Wow, yeah.
It justifies a significantly higher price point because the word itself adds imaginary value. Now, apply that to heritage tomatoes.
Well, a regular tomato is just red, round, and usually kind of watery, but a heritage tomato sounds like it has a royal pedigree.
It does.
It sounds like it was grown from seeds that were carefully saved by a great-grandmother during a historic drought.
It suggests unbroken authenticity and tradition. In modern culinary linguistics, heritage is used as a rebellion against mass-produced, genetically modified industrial agriculture.
That makes total sense.
This leads directly into what the source highlights as a C2 advanced vocabulary concept, provenance.
Yes. The example in the text was pork from the Lake District.
Provenance means the verifiable origin or source of something. When a menu specifies the exact farm, valley, or region an animal came from, it's signaling a massive commitment to local sourcing and ethical quality control. It tells the diner, we care so deeply about this dish that we don't just know it's pork, we know the zip code of the pasture the animal lived in. It builds immense trust.
It's all just masterful storytelling. And speaking of storytelling, the source brings up a word that I see everywhere now. Foraged. As in wild foraged mushrooms.
A very trendy word.
I have to tell you, when I see foraged on a menu, it paints this highly romanticized, almost cinematic picture in my head. I literally imagined the head chef early in the morning, wandering through a misty local forest with a hand-woven basket, carefully plucking mushrooms from beneath fern leaves.
It's a great image.
It adds this massive, premium, back-to-nature aesthetic to the dish.
And realistically, the chef did not do that.
No.
They likely ordered those mushrooms from a specialty supplier who employs a massive team of people doing the foraging on a commercial scale. But the literal truth doesn't matter. The word does its job perfectly. It connects you, the urban diner sitting in a concrete building, to the wild, untamed forest.
We are paying a premium for the romance of the word. But it's not just romantic, nature-based words. The transcript also highlights vocabulary designed to signal immense technical precision, like the term deconstructed.
Deconstructed is a fascinating linguistic warning sign. When a menu says deconstructed apple crumble, it is actively warning you that you are not getting the warm, comforting, baked-in-a-dish dessert your mother used to make.
No, you are getting a hyper-modern smear of apple puree, a mathematically precise pile of toasted crumbs, and a single quenelle of ice cream, all separated by miles of negative space on a massive slate plate.
The word signals an experimental, intellectual approach to cooking. You are being told that you are eating an idea, a chef's philosophical reinterpretation of a classic, rather than just a pie.
And then there's the ultimate technical term, sous vide,
which is a very specific, highly controlled French cooking technique. Food is vacuum sealed and slow cooked in a temperature-controlled water bath.
Right.
But the question is, why put the term sous vide on the menu at all? Why not just say the chicken is slow cooked?
Because slow cooked is what I do in my crock pot at home on a Tuesday. Sous vide sounds like a high-level science experiment.
It signals immense technical exactitude. It tells the diner that the kitchen operates with the precision of a laboratory, justifying the cost of the dish.
Okay, wow.
So, if we look at artisanal, provenance, foraged, and sous vide, this raises the ultimate psychological question. Why do restaurants rely so heavily on this complex lexicon?
Why do they need to write a novel just to sell me a piece of fish?
Because at this level of dining, the customer is not just paying for calories, they are paying for the narrative that these words construct. The words set an incredibly high expectation, and psychologically, high expectations actually alter our sensory perception. Yes, if you believe a tomato is a rare heritage breed, your brain will often perceive it as tasting better. The lexicon itself is a literal flavor enhancer.
The lexicon is a flavor enhancer. I absolutely love that concept. Okay, so we've deciphered the culinary story. We know our pork's zip code, we know our chef's imaginary foraging habits, and our brain is primed for an incredible meal.
The stage is set.
How do we, as advanced speakers, interact with this story? The source moves us into the art of the order, polite interrogations and modifications.
This is where we see the shift from a monologue to a true dialogue. At the survival level, ordering is a one-way street. I would like the chicken. At the masterclass level, ordering is an interview.
The text gives the perfect example of this polite interrogation. You look at the menu, and instead of just pointing, you look at Daniel and say, I was intrigued by the market fish. Could you tell me a little more about it?
The word intrigued is such a powerful, specific choice here. Notice that it doesn't commit to actually buying the dish.
It's non-committal.
It elevates the fish from a mere meal to an object of intellectual curiosity. And more importantly, as we discussed with building rapport, it invites Daniel to perform his expertise and pitch the dish to you.
And according to the source, you don't just stop at the initial question. You drill down into specifics to show you know what you're talking about. Is the sauce very rich?
By asking about the richness of the sauce, you are demonstrating a sophisticated palate to the server. You're showing that you fundamentally understand culinary balance, that a heavy, unctuous sauce might overwhelm a delicate, flaky fish.
Right.
But you do it without sounding arrogant.
Right.
You're asking for guidance, but you're doing so from a place of existing culinary knowledge.
But here is where the rubber meets the road. We can talk about sophisticated palates all day, but the source tackles the ultimate masterclass in modification. You're at a fancy place, but you look at the menu and you really just want to swap the fries for a salad.
Ah, the great dilemma of the modern diner.
I have to push back hard on this section of the transcript because the source suggests we need to tie ourselves up in absolute linguistic knots over this.
It is a delicate process.
Why is it so incredibly hard to just look at the waiter and say, I want a salad, not fries? I am the customer. I am paying $30 or $40 for this plate of food. Yeah. Why do I need to perform Olympic-level linguistic gymnastics just to get some lettuce instead of some potatoes?
It's a completely fair frustration. Why not just demand what you want, since you're paying for it?
Yeah.
The answer lies in understanding the ecosystem you're disrupting. A high-end restaurant kitchen is not a casual assembly line. It's an incredibly finely tuned machine. The executive chef has designed that specific dish, the protein, the starch, the sauce, the garnish, as a complete, balanced, and unified vision.
Okay, I guess.
Asking to change a component is fundamentally rejecting the chef's artistic vision. Furthermore, from a purely logistical standpoint, it disrupts the physical timing of the kitchen line, which is orchestrated down to the second.
So by asking for a salad, you are basically throwing a wrench into the gears of a machine that is already running at maximum capacity.
You are. So the linguistic challenge is, how do we throw the wrench into the machine without angering the mechanic?
Right.
We dissect the C1 phrase provided by the source. I was wondering, would it be an imposition to substitute the fries for a side salad?
Would it be an imposition?
Yes. By deliberately using the word imposition, the diner explicitly acknowledges that they are being a nuisance.
Interesting.
They're verbally validating the disruption to the kitchen's workflow and the chef's vision. It makes the staff feel seen and their hard work respected. You're profoundly apologizing for the hassle in the exact same breath that you're stubbornly demanding the change.
It is so manipulative, but it's so incredibly polite. You stroke their ego, validate their artistic vision and their hard work, and at the end of the day, you still get exactly what you want.
That is the very essence of C1 and C2 fluency in a hospitality setting. It is the frictionless extraction of your own desires.
Frictionless extraction. Okay, so our polite interrogation is over. Daniel successfully navigates the kitchen, apologizes to the chef on our behalf, and brings you the market fish with the side salad, no fries.
The meal begins.
The food has finally arrived. Now we enter the next phase of the source material, the theatrical critique and the graceful complaint.
Now that the curtain has gone up on the food itself, how do we review the performance in real time?
Let's start with the positive side of things, the palette of praise. The Pod Zone transcript rapidly fires off this list of advanced vocabulary that moves so far beyond just chewing and saying, this is delicious.
We need better words.
We have words like exquisite, which the text notes implies extreme refinement and delicacy. We have sublime, taking the flavor to an almost spiritual, transcendent level. And my personal favorite, the highly theatrical, a triumph.
Imagine taking a bite of food and declaring to the table the sauce is an absolute triumph.
You literally sound like a wealthy aristocrat from the 1800s judging an opera.
It's very dramatic.
But the source gets very specific, moving from general praise into hyper-specific flavor and texture descriptors.
And this specificity is exactly what separates a person who is merely consuming calories from a person who is actively critiquing a culinary experience. Let's look at the flavor adjectives.
Okay.
Instead of simply saying something is sour, the advanced speaker calls it piquant or zesty, which suggests a sharp, pleasant, intentional kick rather than mistake.
Intentionality.
A heavy meat-based stew isn't just described as strong or heavy, it's robust, implying a deliberate depth and architectural structure to the flavor. A very light, delicate flavor is praised as subtle.
And the textures. The text lists a velvety mousse, an unctuous sauce.
I want to pause on the word unctuous. It is such a strange, specific word. It sounds exactly like what it means, doesn't it?
It has a very specific phonetic quality. Unctuous derives from Latin roots relating to ointment or anointing with oil. In a culinary context, it describes a rich, luxurious, almost oily mouthfeel that perfectly coats your tongue.
That sounds amazing. It is a word that implies a slow, decadent sensory experience.
And then there is the most poetic descriptor from the text, an ethereal foam. Ethereal meaning otherworldly, light, almost ghostly, like it might literally float off the spoon before it reaches your mouth.
As the text points out, this is literally the language of a professional food critic. By wielding these words, you are no longer just a paying customer. You have transformed yourself into a judge on a high-stakes cooking show.
But what happens when you take a bite of the ethereal foam and it tastes like dish soap? Or the robust stew is freezing cold?
The dreaded moment.
We have to pivot to the absolute hardest part of dining out. The ultimate linguistic test.
Complaining.
Yes, when the food is undeniably bad. I know so many people, myself included, sometimes who would genuinely rather eat a burnt steak in absolute silence than say a single critical word to the waiter.
It is a universal phenomenon. Complaining triggers immense social anxiety for most people.
What is that?
Because bringing up a flaw completely shatters the established harmony of the evening. It introduces direct conflict into a space that is fundamentally designed for leisure and pleasure.
So how does the advanced C1 level speaker handle this anxiety-inducing moment? The source focuses entirely on the concept of removing blame.
Yes, indirectness.
It provides phrases like, "I'm so sorry to be a bother, but I'm finding my steak to be a little on the tough side." Or, "I'm afraid my soup seems to have gone a bit cold."
We need to notice the deep, strategic indirectness of these specific phrases. Let's analyze the steak example thoroughly. If you call Daniel over and say, "This steak is tough," you are stating an objective, unarguable fact about the physical world.
You're calling them out.
You're directly calling the chef a bad cook. It demands a defensive, adversarial response from the staff.
But if you use the source's phrasing and say, "I'm finding my steak to be a little on the tough side,"
you completely alter the reality of the complaint. You make it a subjective, highly personal experience. You are essentially saying to the waiter, "Perhaps my jaw is unusually weak today. Perhaps my personal standards for meat are strange and unfounded. But in my own subjective reality, this meat is hard for me to chew."
That's genius.
By framing the issue as your own personal failing rather than a failing of the kitchen, you entirely prevent a confrontation.
You give them a ladder to climb down from their own mistake.
Exactly. You allow the restaurant to save face. The same psychological logic applies to a situation where they bring you the wrong dish entirely. The source suggests looking at the waiter and saying, "I think there may have been a slight misunderstanding."
Notice you do not say, "You brought me the wrong food."
Never. Because saying "you brought me" assigns direct, undeniable blame to Daniel. A slight misunderstanding is a beautiful, passive linguistic construction.
It really is.
It implies that the mistake just magically materialized out of the ether. Nobody's to blame. Daniel didn't write it down wrong. The kitchen didn't misread the ticket. The universe simply got a little confused for a moment, and now we must all work together as a team to fix it.
So diplomatic.
It allows the restaurant to correct the error gracefully, without anyone losing their professional dignity.
It is wild how much linguistic effort we put into protecting the feelings of the people we are paying to serve us.
It's all part of the social contract.
Okay, the meal is finally over. The plates are cleared, the ethereal foam has been consumed, but the social performance isn't done. The Podzone transcript outlines a final act. We have to settle the bill.
The payment dance and the graceful exit. This is perhaps the most culturally complex part of the entire experience.
The source literally refers to it as the payment dance. I want you, the listener, to picture this classic scenario. You've seen it 100 times. Two people are sitting at a table. The waiter drops a little black letter folder in the middle of the table, and they instantly start fighting over the check.
It happens every night.
Person A reaches for it. "Let me get this," or "This one's on me." Person B immediately grabs the wrist. "Oh no, you absolutely do not have to do that. Are you sure?" Person A pulls it back. "No, I insist. It's my pleasure."
If an alien were to watch this interaction objectively, It looks like a hostile argument over a small leather book. But it's actually a deeply entrenched, mandatory social obligation. Every gesture and syllable is choreographed.
Why on earth do we do this? Why do we perform this fake fight over spending money?
Because paying the bill is fundamentally about establishing social dominance and projecting generosity.
Oh, wow.
Person A desperately wants the status of being the provider for the evening. However, person B must vehemently protest because simply accepting a free meal instantly would make them look greedy, expectant, or socially inferior.
So they have to fight.
The loud protest proves to the room that person B is humble and capable of paying. Once that humility is firmly established, person A is then permitted to enforce their generosity.
No, I insist. The magic words that end the physical struggle.
But the crucial final step of this dance, as the source strictly points out, is person B accepting the gift with a very specific conditional phrase. Well, thank you so much. You must let me get to the next one.
Rebalancing the ledger.
Precisely. It effectively rebalances the social debt. Person A gets the glory and the status of paying today, but person B asserts that they are financially capable and fully willing to be the provider in the future. The relationship, though temporarily skewed by the gift of the meal, remains fundamentally equitable.
And what if they are just coworkers or acquaintances and they don't want to establish a complex multi-meal social debt? The source briefly covers the practicalities of just paying for your own food, asking the waiter, shall we split it? Or using the classic English idiom, shall we go Dutch?
Which is a very clean, unemotional way to handle the transaction. It removes the need for the payment dance entirely.
But then there's the final boss of the dining experience, the negotiation with the restaurant itself regarding the gratuity, the tip.
This requires incredibly careful reading of the final document. The source clarifies the essential lexicon of the bill. You must scan the receipt for the phrase service charge included, which means the tip is mandatory, already calculated, and your math is done.
That's the easy one.
Or you look for not included, meaning you must calculate the gratuity yourself based on cultural norms.
But the most dangerous phrase the text highlights is the crucial word discretionary, as in a discretionary service charge of 20% has been added to your bill.
Discretionary simply means optional. You have the right to remove it. But adding it automatically is a brilliant psychological trap laid by the restaurant.
A trap.
They add the money, assuming that you will be far too embarrassed or too socially anxious to call the waiter over and ask for it to be removed. To ask to remove a discretionary charge is the ultimate social confrontation. It requires you to state unequivocally and out loud that the service you received was poor.
Which, as we learned from our desperate attempts to avoid complaining about the cold soup, human beings will do literally anything to avoid. We will just angrily pay the extra 20% to avoid having an awkward 30-second conversation with Daniel.
And the restaurants know this. Most people simply pay the tax on their own social anxiety.
So the bill is finally paid. The anxiety is over. We are standing up, putting our coats on. The source mentions the final curtain of the performance. The graceful exit.
Because you don't just vanish into the night without a trace.
Right. You have to close the loop. You walk past the podium. You make eye contact with the host again. You smile, bringing the entire night all the way back to the universal welcome at the beginning, and you offer a final departing compliment.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful evening.
This final interaction is vital. It leaves a lingering positive feeling with the staff, ensuring your status as a preferred client if you ever return. It officially completes the social performance. You have exited the stage, the curtains close, and you revert from a sophisticated diner back into a normal person. Okay, let's take a breath and unpack everything we've just journeyed through today. We started at the front door with the simple, primal survival utility of a table for two, please, a basic data transfer to secure territory.
They covered a lot of ground.
And we watched, step by step, how advanced language this C1 masterclass from the Pod Zone material turns basic English into a tool for wielding immense social power. You use vocabulary to curate your environment, to gently manipulate the host into giving you a better table, to elevate the server from a functionary to an ally.
To decipher the complex culinary storytelling of the menu.
Yes. To frictionlessly modify the chef's vision, to complain without causing offense or losing dignity, and to navigate the complex social debt of the final bill.
It is an incredible, undeniable demonstration of how language shapes our physical reality. The food coming out of the kitchen might be exactly the same, but the experience of eating it is entirely constructed by the words we choose to use at the table.
Which brings me to a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Based on everything we've pulled from this text today, we spent this entire deep dive describing our dining language as a social performance, an elaborate ballet, and a strategic chess game.
It is highly calculated at every turn.
Highly calculated. So my question is, how much of our authentic selves are we actually bringing to the restaurant table?
That is the big question.
When we use these highly stylized, indirect phrases to avoid imposing on the kitchen, or when we orchestrate our image with the perfect unctuous compliment, or when we perform that choreographed fake fight over the leather bill folder, are we ever actually communicating our true desires?
Or we're just acting.
Are we just flawlessly playing assigned characters in the restaurant's nightly play? The next time you sit down and fold your napkin and look at a menu, I want you to ask yourself, who is really ordering the food?
Are you speaking, or is the script speaking for you?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I hope you listen actively the next time you dine out and really watch the choreography unfold around you. And remember, no matter how murky or intimidating the social landscape gets, you can always just order the pepperoni pizza.